Hello everybody, how is it going? I am Lucas and welcome back to another episode of Amps in the Axe 3. I'm going to be your host Lucas, and today we are going to be looking at the Cameron CCV 100 watt amp. Hey, if this is your first time here, or if you've been here before, make sure you press that subscribe button because we are going to be going through all of the amps in the Axe 3. So, the Cameron CCV 100 watt amp is a very close cousin to the Cameron Atomica, which we covered a couple episodes back. I'll link that up top and at the end if you want to check that one out. It's kind of based on the same idea. It's a overdriven Marshall. This one is pretty similar to the JCM 800 schematic wise, but it also has one little thing that the JCM doesn't, and that's the saturation switch. Saturation switch on the CCV 100 is on. It isn't a very high gain amp at its very core. It's kind of like the JCM isn't really all that high gain, but the saturation, and if you pick really hard, you can get some really beefy tones out of it. So the CCV itself, it has a ton of different modes that's modeled in the Axe. So you have 1A and 1B, which this is modeled off of the first channel. So you have two channels on the same. You have first channel, just kind of like the Atomica. You have channel 1 and you have channel 2. And for channel 2, we have 3 modes. We have, if I take that back, I'm sorry, we have 4. We have A, B, C, and D is what we have. The first channel is, it's kind of clean. It's kind of hard to find a use for it, to be honest with you. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the clean channel, I say the clean channel, it's channel 1, it sounds like this. That is on my bridge pickup. Guitar I'm using is my Black Cat Headless with Fishman Tosins. Let's go into the split coil position, see if that makes it sound a little better. So the clean channel is, I call it the clean channel. Channel 1 is, it's kind of no gain. You kind of really, see I have the master volume at 6, and let me put up the input drive. It doesn't really break up too much. See, by doing, you see when I pushed it really hard, it doesn't really break up per se. Just those mids and those lows kick in on it. It's same thing for 1B, but 1B is a little bit different. You kind of have a little bit of drive. On this one, I say drive, it's a little bit more overdriven than 1A is. I think 1B sounds a little bit better than 1A, and then when you heard the more gain, when you heard it got a little bit crunchier, that was when I switched to my bridge pickup. But I know I'm talking about all these modes, but let's actually look a little bit into the amp. So everything I'm going to be telling you today is going to come from EX Amp Guy. I'm going to put that in the description down below. This comes from the Fractal Forum. So this is what the actual amp looks like itself. They actually call it the Cameron CCV, so it's based on, and that's what it's called. And the Axe 100 watt EL34 power tubes. That's kind of gives its character since it's sort of related to the JCM 800. It's kind of a one-trick pony, like Cliff says, but it does really one great trick. You know, if you're going for that Van Halen type of sound, it nails that like perfectly. And as EX says, the channel 1 doesn't really do much, as you kind of heard. 1B is alright. I mean, you can get by with it, but if you're going to go for like a clean or something like that, or even like a crunch, there's other amps that do that better. Moving right along, like I said before, not really high gain. Topology is similar to a JCM 800, but it has a saturation switch on. And so this one has tons of switches in it. So let's talk about that. That's what all the different, like 1A, 1B, stuff like that. It's based off of the different switches that this has. So channel 1, these are controls: punch, resonance, and depth, presence, master, bass, middle treble gain, and lots of 3-way switches. The voicing affects resonance, dark affects presence. The gain style adjusts the Jose Master. Gain clipping, bright controls, treble, therefore gain less noticeable at higher gain settings, which makes kind of sense. Channel 2 has these controls: solo master, master Master middle treble to gain controls. This model has a single drive control and 3-way switches, 2 times gain cell, 2 times bright, and it has the drive. No, now this is kind of important about this amp. So the gain or the drive has a taper controls perpendicular, so goes from like 0 to 100 very fast. On the second channel, it gets there quick. So you get that distortion quick is what this part of the guide is talking about. Let's move right along. Bright 1 switches the bright capacitor, which you can alter in the advanced menu. So if you want to make it darker, you can do that. Dark switch is a negative feedback control, so you set the negative feedback to 3.6 to reproduce the switch in the middle, set it to 9.7 to reproduce the switch in the right position. 5 for the left is default. So there's tons of like different tones you can get. But Cliff even says in here, like, when you're moving the switches around, it doesn't make that big of a difference on the real amp itself. So let's look at the different modes that we were referring to earlier. So 1A, 1B is a capture of channel 1. I assume that the difference between the two models is the gain style switch position. So that is Yek talking there, which he's right, because as you heard on 1A, there isn't that much there. It isn't as hot as 1B is, and 1B sounds better. 1A sounds kind of dead to me. Models 2A to 2D capture channel 2 with the following settings. So I'm gonna bounce back and forth. So we're gonna talk about the settings that are in here, and then we'll jump to the settings that I dialed in on the XFX. So 2A, bright. The bright is 1 left, bright 2 is left, and the gain style is left. So 2A, everything is going to be to the left. Okay, so here we are. For all of these settings, we're going to be using this IR right here. We're using the GGD Zilla oversized 412 V30 UK with an SM57 on it. This is proximity and the smoothing that is on it. Preamp is high quality, and I have a little bit of room in there, a little bit of room sound in there. That's literally going to be the same thing for all of them. For all of the amps, I dialed everything in authentic. I really did not touch any part except the output EQ, and it's going to be a little bit different depending from mode to mode. So this is what 2A sounds like. It's going to be in the bridge pickup, and this is with everything to the left. By the way, I'm in drop C tuning. 2A is really cool. It feels like a very mellow channel compared to like 2C and 2D. 2C and 2D are kind of my favorites, but 2A, excuse me, is really cool because it has a gain in there, but it isn't as ferocious as 2C and 2D. Now it's in the split coil position. Me fooling around sounding like an idiot. I find this amp can get kind of shrill kind of fast. I left the master at 5. I got the level up right there. A little bit of presence, a little bit of treble. Since this amp is sort of in that Marshall realm, it has a lot of bass and mids in it. So for the output EQ, I scooped a little bit. I didn't really scoop a whole lot. I usually scoop more than this on every one of them. So let's see what this sounds like with EQ on and off. See, it's not that big of a difference. I just kind of cleaned out a little bit of that nastiness that was going on. So let's move over to 2B. Let's see what 2B sounds like. Master is lower on here. A little more presence, a little more depth. The bass, mid, and treble are kind of around the same. So the bright switch is on for all of it, and the saturation switch is on for all of it. I didn't touch any of those settings. Those are all left default. 2B, you saw me jack up the knobs there. This one's a little thinner sounding, but let's consult the guide. So for 2B, you have bright 1 is left, bright 2 is right, the gain style is left. So the only thing that has changed from 2A to 2B is that bright 2 is to the right. Out of these two, I kind of rather A. I mean, they're so close together. This one's lacking a little bit of bass. It's probably my own. Well, it isn't my own fault. Kind of my own fault, but like, look, I have compared to 2A. Look at the EQ difference there. So I have a lot more low end in it. The scoop isn't as extreme. Let's do EQ on and off. This channel is interesting. I still rather 2A, personally. I don't know, like, moving that one little switch, it cuts a lot of the low end, I find. Now, let's move on to 2C. We're getting into my favorite channels. The bright switch is actually off. I take that back. It's on. I'm an idiot, and I didn't move the block. Sorry about that. So, let's see how 2C sounds, and for 2C, the bright is left, of course. Bright 1 is left, bright 2 is left, but the gain style is to the right. So for 2C and 2D, the gain style is going to be to the right, which I find 2C and 2D have more attack in them. And let's see what 2C sounds like. I like 2C a lot. It has a lot of cool attack in it. It's cool. This amp is a very, I hate to even say this, but it's a very gent amp in the fact that gain isn't super high. You has like a darker, thicker tone to it, and the attack on it is insane. Like, I really did not try to dial it in to have a lot of attack. I just kind of dialed it into where it sounded good. But it has like a lot of attack, especially 2C. 2C has a lot of attack in it, I find. And it sounds really good. It's kind of in that Friedman range, but well, I mean, this amp and the Friedman are kind of based off of the same thing, kind of. But that's 2C. Now let's move on to 2D, the final mode that's modeled here in the XFX. So 2D, bright 1 is left again, bright 2 is to the right, but right this time, and then the gain style is also to the right. And this is a note I kind of glossed over. The output levels from each model varies, and it's true, it does. I kind of normalize it, because if you've watched like the master volume and the levels of each one as we roll through. So you see on 2C and 2D are my favorites, but 2C has like a lot more attack, I find. And look where I have the master at as it compared to 2D. 2D, I have the master up higher, and I have the level's a little bit lower. So that kind of equals out. That's just kind of how it happened. I really didn't do it on purpose. These two channels are very, very, very different. 2C has a lot more attack, but I find that 2D is a lot thicker. 2D, it's really good if you want some really thick rhythms. It's also really good for leads, I find, well, the way that I dial in, because you see I have like a shit ton of presence in it, and I look at the output, I barely touched anything. Let's see what it sounds like with the EQ on and off. This one's really thick. I'm going to go to my neck pickup and let you hear what it sounds like. A couple of single note leadish type of tones. I like D more kind of for like a lead type of setting because it's really thick sounding. It's very juicy, I guess you could say. It's good for rhythms too. It just kind of really depends on what you want. I like 2C a little more because it has a little bit more attack in it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've stayed here this long, thank you so much. I know this video kind of ran a little bit long, but we had kind of a lot of modes to run through. We had 6 different modes to run through. That is going to be it for the Cameron CCV. I really like this amp. Next to the Atomica is one of my favorite amps in here too. This one kind of feels like an Atomica that's stepped back a little bit. I'm talking about on the Axe specifically. It isn't as wild. It's a little bit more controlled, I find. And you get a little bit more flexibility with it because you have so many different modes that you can wind through. So let me know, do you use the Cameron CCV? Do you have it in your patches? Let me know your tips and tricks in the comments down below. This amp is cool. My favorite 2 modes are 2C and 2D. Let me know what your favorite modes are down in those comments down below. But as for me, I'm going to have to be out. Peace.